ready to start?
Okay.
Okay, so I'm just going to share my screen.
If we could make sure everyone else is muted, please, and then if you have got questions, maybe just save them up and ask at the end, please, and then we'll see where we go from there. Thanks, Olivier.
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Great. So good morning, everybody. First, I'm going to discuss creating an online presence as an ECR, and I'd actually quite like to hear some of your thoughts and opinions on that. So first and foremost, why bother creating an online presence, and what is it? Also, why would we want an online presence as an early career researcher? So please offer some suggestions. Who do I know in the audience? Sophia, Job, Melvin, Maureen. Why would we want an online presence as an early career researcher? What benefits would that have to you?
Networking.
Networking, yep, that's great. Great first point. What does networking mean? Who else is in the audience? Okay, so I came up with some ideas. So public engagement, participation, being able to speak to other researchers, establishing yourself as an expert in the field. That one potentially a bit controversial if you don't know what you're talking about, but for the most part, creating a voice online. Some academic researchers have created an excellent personal brand, and off of the back of that have the capacity to write books and get involved with some really interesting research which may not be in their field necessarily. Future employers will potentially be Googling you and trying to find out who you are. If you are who you say you are, if you've got a good online presence, then that can really help cement your name within any employer's minds. Also brings some longevity to studies and allows you to keep up to date with current research in your specific study area. So what does an online profile look like? So I decided to Google myself to see if I could be found, and maybe you want to do this yourself and see what comes up. So first thing that comes up when I search for Olivier Humphrey is my employer, so BGS, my Twitter handle, my Google Scholar, a LinkedIn page, a ResearchGate, and an ORCID ID, which is a nice collection. So yeah, I'll just go through each of these and describe what each of them is and how they can be used and how you can use them. So if you have an employer, hopefully you could also have a staff profile, and on that profile you might have information about your education, where you've previously worked, some of your key publications and research interests. So a professional a page to describe yourself. Twitter, I'm sure you're all familiar with Twitter. This is more of a social aspect where some people decide to tweet about work and publicize themselves. Other people tweet about things that they're doing, they're eating, they're seeing, they're looking at, they're reading. So you can have a wide variety of personal interactions on Twitter, and for some people that's really beneficial, and enhancing that personal connection with other researchers. Google Scholar, this is where, for me, I keep all of the papers that I've co-authored and authored are stored on there, and you can gather some kind of metric about how much you've been cited or read and how many papers you've got. ResearchGate is very similar to that, and you can store different projects, different papers again, but there's also the capacity to look and search for other jobs, and I suppose can help form more of a researcher community where you can actually connect and communicate with other researchers. LinkedIn, that's a much more professional website where I personally don't use that too much, but other people can look and search for jobs. I think it's very much like a profile, so you can write descriptions and post opinions. Orchid ID, which I'd say is the most professional researcher website. So this is where you can store information about your employment, your education, papers published, societies that you're a part of. I think that's it. I've got a couple of slides later, so I can just confirm. And then finally, SCGH, which I think was the next link down, was a couple of blog items that I'd written for SCGH. So in answer to the first question, can I be found online? I believe that I can be found online, and I think this has got, I therefore have a digital footprint and an academic profile online. So I think the next few slides I've got are just going to showcase exactly what that looks like. So this is the Google Scholar profile. So you can see there's a picture of me, my name, people I've co-authored and worked with, citations, and then some other academic indexes, and a list of papers based on number of citations first, but you can all edit that to look at years. So this is quite a limited profile. There are some buzzwords which I've associated with myself. Again, so keeping these consistent should allow you to come up with a user-friendly and an internet search-friendly profile. I think in previous meetings here, we've discussed having a singular name, and that can really help with having a profile across multiple platforms. So I typically go by Olivier S. Humphrey. So if we have a look at my ResearchGate, I've got the same name, I've got the same employer, the same general information about me. Here I've got a little bit more of an introduction, and I can also express the skills I have. And I think the last one that I tend to use is Orchid ID, and this really is just a catalogue of employment and projects that I've been a part of, any grant funding that I've won, and a full list of all publications. So I don't know if any of you have got ResearchGate profiles or Orchid IDs or are on Google Scholar. It'd be interesting at this point to hear from any of you if you do have that, and if your experience of that are vaguely similar to my own. So I don't know if anyone in the audience would like to say that they do or do not have a profile, or are going to set up a profile.
Faith Candy has one. You could ask Faith. I'm just Googling some of you.
Faith Candy. Yeah, yes, I have I have Google Scholar, I have ResearchGate, I have LinkedIn, and I think it has been very positive from my experience. I was able to review a grant from, I think, the Austrian government. Based on this, I think they found me like this. I was able to, I think, also deliver a seminar in Sweden based on this. Yeah, so I think it's really helpful from my experience so far.
That's excellent. That sounds very positive. If you're able to connect with other collaborators across different nations and deliver talks about your research, that's a really.
Do you want a couple more volunteers?
Yeah, who else have we got?
Priya Gurav, Faith Onyanguri.
Hello, good morning. Felicia.
I can hear someone very faint.
Just very faintly.
Yeah, Felicia talking.
There we go, I can hear you a bit better.
Okay. I just want to contribute as well that I do have a Google Scholar profile, and talking about having your presence or thing like that, I just decided to, okay, let me check on the internet if my presence is there. So I typed in my name, and
got intermittent internet connectivity there.
It brought out this interview in a magazine of Geochemical Society that I belong to, where they feature me on Meet the Scientist. So that was the first thing it brought out, and it was there, you know, I felt excited. And then after that, some other time when I go online to check on my profile, I could see that the search engine has been going to pick some other information about me for my research gate, LinkedIn, and grouping it all together in one place. So anytime I type in my name, it brings out all this information. Very
Great,
cool.
thank you. So I would also recommend getting these profiles if you feel like you don't have anything to put on there, if you don't have any publications at this stage in your careers. I think it's still worthwhile creating that profile so that when you do have something, it's very easy to then set it up and add stuff to your profile. It also allows you to research other people and have a look at different projects which are going on, especially on ResearchGate. A lot of people can add their papers to ResearchGate so that you can have a look at recent publications. I think the second part of the slideshow is just looking at automatic referencing systems. So first and foremost, do people use automatic referencing systems?
Excuse me, may I comment before you move to the next?
Yeah.
Olivier, may I comment before you move to the next topic?
Yeah.
Is that in as much as we may be at different stages of research, but everybody, even those with the longest list of publications and achievements, started from zero. So don't worry about the number of publications that appear there. And don't worry about the size of whatever appears. As soon as you get in there, it will be something that will urge you. You will find yourself urged by simply your presence. It will help you move forward. It's like a pacemaker. So once you register in Google Scholar and others, it will help you move, focus, and move on to improve that. So I urge all of us to please don't worry about the list of achievements we have as at the moment, but as soon as you start doing that, then you will find yourself improving. Thanks.
I suppose
Can we just make that a task? Can we make that a task for everyone who has no presence yet on this platform to go ahead immediately after today's workshop to create a platform, a profile for themselves on those platforms? That would be a good task to do immediately.
it's important to keep it up to date as well. Yeah, so
That's
I've seen a couple that, for LinkedIn, they haven't had anything happening for a while. So if you're going to do it, just try and keep it up to date. The other thing is, if you're in ResearchGate or Google Scholar, you can type in your interests, and then it will recommend papers to you or researchers you might want to follow, and then you can follow them, and then it will update you every time they have something new. That's often how I know what's going on, because it saves me time. Google and ResearchGate are doing this for me and pointing out some of the latest papers, even before they're released formally as a publication. Right, there you go on that, Olivier.
Yeah, we do have an intermittent fire alarm going off here, so apologies if you can hear that in the background. So coming back to the purpose of this, and this being a writing workshop, when you're writing, I personally use an automatic referencing system, and I use Endnote, which allows me to cite while I write, store all my citations in one place, store PDFs. I can access it via different computers over the internet, and I can even share different EndNote libraries with colleagues that I'm writing different papers with. So I didn't start using an automatic referencing system until I started my PhD, and now I can't see a way of going back to writing without one. So I think over the next few slides, just gonna give a little tutorial in using EndNote, its applications, and why it's a useful software when writing papers specifically. So how to use EndNote. So what we're going to do is, or what I've done here is I've opened EndNote, and hopefully you can see that. We're going to go and pretend that we're writing a paper. So when I'm writing a paper, if it's not the first thing, one of the early things I like to do is decide which journal I'm going to be submitting to, and then from there I can go to the submission guidelines and find out what sort of referencing library that specific journal will use. So I think what I've done here is taken environmental geochemistry as a target journal. So within here, you can normally, so some journals will have specific EndNote libraries which they've put up. You can download and import that into EndNote. I think I was having a look. For citations within environmental geochemistry and health, authors are encouraged to follow the APA version 7 guidelines. So if we go and have a look in the EndNote library, or we can go to this link on EndNote, and I'll put these PowerPoint slides online so you can all access these websites, and you can search for a different citation library. So if we search for APA, we found the 7th edition of that. There's all sorts of different libraries. I think there's 5 pages here. So if we wanted to publish in a different journal, for example, like Stoughton. Okay, nothing there. If we say maybe Nature, you've got a Nature paper that you want to write. So within Nature scientific reports, Nature reviews, nanotechnology, Nature geoscience, you can download different libraries and import that straight into EndNote. And then when you're writing and citing at the same time, it'll automatically process those references and put them into the format that the journal requires. So that's a really useful tool and can be used retrospectively. So if you've written a journal article, submitted it to the publisher and they've rejected it, and you want to resubmit somewhere else, you can use the EndNote library to automatically update all of the references for a different style. And then you just have to proof and check that they've all been converted, especially if you're going from a numbered style to a written style. So another great thing about EndNote is that and all referencing softwares is that you can automatically download citations from Google Scholar or publishers, and that then you can then open that reference directly into your software of choice. So I think I've just put a little example here of a really nice paper published in Environmental Science and Technology. So if we want to cite it, so from here we can go and click on the cite button. I think with other publishers, you can import directly into Mendeley or into other softwares. So for here, using Google Scholar, we'll just have a look. So I've clicked on the cite button, and APA, that was the referencing library that Environmental Geochemistry and Health used. So if we click on EndNote, this will download this citation as an EndNote file. I can click on that and it should directly open into EndNote. And then within this, I've got all of the information from the Google Scholar link. I can have a look and have a look at some of this data. So I can see the title, the author list, where it was published, the year it was published, a bit more information about the reference, so what volume and issue it was, and the page numbers. So all the information you need to then put that into a full reference list for submitting to a journal for publication is all automatically stored. I can also attach a different file. So if I go back to that link, and we have actually a look at the full link, you can see within here, this also can add this directly to Mendeley, or I can share it. But what I want to do is take the PDF. So I can take that PDF and store it in my Endnote library, and it will be there forever, as long as I have access to Endnote and backed up online. So if we just download that, put that. I think it's really important to actually save these all PDFs of papers correctly. So really add the name of the first author, whether it's et al, the year, and the title, so that it's easy to find. So if we save that, and then we go, I think it's going to open up in PDF viewer. So if we go back to the Endnote, have a look at my download list. Where did I download to? Where did I download that to? Sorry, I lost where I downloaded that to. Let's do that again. Save it somewhere I can remember. So save it to the desktop and just go. So again, Humphrey et al. Save that, and then back into the Endnote library again, and we can add a file to the Endnote library by just dragging it across, and then it's stored in the Endnote library, and then we've got all the information. We can change how the actual reference is presented, and then we can also just have a quick look at what other features are in Endnote. So you can see I've got, at the moment, I've just created a blank library for us to have a look at. So we've got all the references currently stored. We've got recently added, got unfiled, and then within here we've got groups. Could also find full text, groups shared by me with other people, and I can do some online searches. So if I wanted to create a group, I can just right-hand click and create a group and call it, for example, iodine, and then from there I can just drag and drop into the iodine group. If I wanted to create another group based on another research interest, then I can easily do that, download a whole host of papers, store them here, attach the PDF, and then I don't need to have internet access to read these articles. So just go back to the PowerPoint and have a look at what else I said we're going to do. So stored PDFs. Next thing to do is looking at actually using Microsoft Word or your preferred software for writing. For me, it's Microsoft. I think that's the easiest. And then we can have a look at the Endnote plugin in Microsoft Word. So here we can change. So again, we can insert citations. We can go to our Endnote library. We can edit and manage citations. We can select the style for publication. So again, APA was the preferred choice of environmental geochemistry and health. So we can just click on that, and then it will update any of our references. We can update citations and bibliography. At the moment, it's just a blank document, so there's nothing there. But we can have a look at that in a moment. And then there's all other instant formatting. You can turn that on, and then as you're writing, the software will automatically update. You can also, I think this is a manuscript matcher, and there are various other tools online similar to this, where you can actually, once you've written your article, you can submit the draft to a website, which can then assess the words you've used in your abstract and the title, and recommend a journal that best fits what you've written. But personally, I like to do that at the beginning, so I can assess the journal's aims and objectives, their scope, and look at how they prefer to see you submit it, how you prepare the manuscript. So let's import a citation, insert citation, and then if you know what citation you're going to search for, if you search for Humphrey, that's the only one in our library at the moment. But if we had others, then we could get a whole list. So if we want to insert that into our Word article, we can see that it's added the reference, and this is how it's automatically formatted it, and then it's added the bibliography list, which you can stick at the end of the article. If we wanted to change this, you can just right-hand click on it, edit the citation, and you can either display as the default, which is then in these brackets, or if I was starting a sentence and I wanted to display the author first and then the year, it's a quick click and it automatically updates. If I wanted to change the style very quickly, and I've wanted to do a numbered style, I can just click on the numbered, I think, and then yeah, you can see it's updated based on this. However, this library was established, so we can change that back to the default, and then we've just got the number 1 for the numbered referencing style. So for me, I think this saves a lot of time when it comes to ensuring everything's up to date, and as long as you check all the information that's been originally added to your Endnote library, and that's all up to date. You've got the page numbers, you've got the issue, the volume, the year, the journal, and the authors, and the title. I don't think you can go too far wrong with these automatic referencing library softwares. So just going back to the PowerPoint, there's, if you're not sure or you're not using these at the moment, or you'd like to use one, there are a whole host of YouTube tutorials which you can access and look at. So here I've placed YouTube tutorials for Endnote, Mendeley and Zotero. Endnote, you do have to pay for access to Endnote, but if your institution has a license, then as a student you can normally access that. Our employer pays for the Endnote library's license, so that's the software I use. Mendeley and Zotero I've heard very good. They're both free and open for, I think they're both free, or you might have to pay for additional storage if you exceed however many gigabytes storage are allowed, but I think that would be pretty unusual. So that's a very brief overview. I would really recommend you do go and use one if you're not using these, and even if you are using these, there might be additional software functions that you're not aware of. So have a look and see if you can learn something new from any of these videos. They're not too long. I think the Mendeley and Zotero videos are about 10 minutes long. So if you're not using this, I'd really recommend downloading it, getting some papers in and having it go. It's really useful for any academic writing. I think that's my last slide. So are there any questions?
Can I make a comment?
Yeah.
First, it was said for the previous comment, it was recommended immediately after this meeting that people should go to a social platform and register themselves. And the thing you have to do after is, yes, start using softwares like this, because this will help your life a lot you cannot imagine. But I think the only one that is really free is Zotero. the Endnote you have to pay, and if you have to pay full price, it's quite expensive, and it seems to me that you have to pay every year. Mendeley was free at the beginning, but I think it's Elsevier, or I don't remember, Clarivate perhaps also, that put the hand on it, and now there is you nearly always have to pay when Zotero is the only one that is free, and it's a collaborative project, so it will always remain free. And really it's highly efficient. And what you have shown, I think participants here must start immediately to do it, because it will save your time and make the things more efficient. I think nowadays there are so many published papers, you cannot work without using one of those softwares. And I think it seems what you have just shown, it seems necessary that the people try, and after this ask questions and use it on a daily basis, because you cannot immediately understand all the functions, but you have to start to use it on a daily basis. So thank you, Olivier, for your nice presentation. I think very useful.
Great, thank you. Any more questions about either online profile or referencing software?
I would like to comment on the referencing software. When I did my PhD, I would go to the library and photocopy publications. It was just, I started my PhD I think just a year after the PDF became common. So most of my publications were hard copies. And I would carry them because I was doing a split program both in Kenya and Europe. So I would carry all my stuff in a suitcase, and you can imagine how heavy that was. When you have a Endnote, you will organize a library that you'll be able to carry in your phone, and a library that has everything. So you'll be able to work on the fly anywhere in the world. You'll be able to carry all your library wherever you are. I'm just giving an additional advantage. Is that when you have a flash disk, you'll be able to have all the stuff that you want. That's besides all the work that, all the easy all the easy things that it will make you have, that Olivier has talked about. I do strongly urge that those who are not using these softwares, I do strongly urge that you pick one and use it. It will make your life, it will change your life. So I don't know if you have to communicate with one another as we wish to do, then it would be best that we all learn all the programs so that you can exchange. I'm normally able to move articles between Mendeley and Endnote. I've not used Zotero, but I don't know whether that's possible. If it is possible, then you will be able to exchange articles. You'll be able to exchange resources or use similar resources between your network.
Great, thank you, Deepa. Just a couple of questions in the chat. So first, one of the questions regarding LinkedIn. How do I best write a profile that clearly explains who I am and what I have going on without necessarily exaggerating? How do you write anything? You give it a go, reread it, edit it. If you think it's too long-winded or boring, then rewrite it. I'd say a really good way of getting an idea of what's a good LinkedIn profile is having a look at other people. Don't copy, but have a look what other people have written, how they've written it, the style. I would say it is a more business orientated software. I might be wrong, but speak with a vocabulary and write with a vocabulary that reflects a more professional outlook. I hope that answers that question. If anyone has any different opinion on that, then please voice that. So authors should check copyright before displaying their papers in ResearchGate. Yes, absolutely. Make sure you're not breaking any of the publishing house rules and not breaking any copyright law. So just make sure you're putting up any full articles or pre-proofs appropriately. What else? What other questions have we got in the chat? I don't think there's any other questions specifically, but there's still time if anyone wants to ask anything.
I think Miriam's hand is up.
Yeah.
Miriam.
Yeah, thank you, Olivia, for the lecture, most especially on how to use the referencing tools. The first time I was introduced to referencing tools was when I was in the UK as a visiting researcher. So then I started using the Microsoft Office Referencing Manager, and though that one is very time consuming, but eventually what I got afterward was interesting. In fact, I'm very happy with myself that, so something can actually do something for me this easy and organized. So last year I was trying to apply for Marie Curie grants, and then the referencing style that was required wasn't on Microsoft Office. So my supervisor there introduced me to Zotero, and I must say that you starting with Endnote, then to Mendeley, so I am appreciating the Zotero more and more. Though I am made to realize that Mendeley and Endnotes are not free. They are restrictive in a way, but with Zotero, you just make sure you don't exceed your 300 megabytes. So once you are within the limit of 300 megabytes, then and the results will be very amazing. So I really appreciate your lecture. Thank you. So I'm going to try the Mendeley again, because you're saying that it's not really restrictive. So I don't know how to go about that, but I'll try it out. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, just to emphasize, you use the software that you have available to you. If you don't have access to Endnote, and there is a high paywall for it, you use Zotero. Invest the time in finding out how to use it using free YouTube videos, and I'll send the links, or I'll put this PowerPoint online so you can have access to those links, or just alternatively YouTube Zotero tutorial and something will come up.
Okay.
Another question in the chat was, can we talk more about ORCID? I suppose quickly just quickly show you my ORCID page, and you can just have a quick look at that and what it consists of. So when you create an ORCID ID, you'll get a personalized ORCID ID number, and only you will have that. And then really I can add where I'm currently working, some keywords, key interests, information about all of my employment, my education and various qualifications, membership, so membership to Society of Environmental Geochemistry and Health and Royal Society of Chemistry, funding that I've won, and then academic publications with DOIs. And really that's all I personally use ORCID for. But it's a professional, I'd say a professional way to catalog all of your academic outputs, and yeah, create a profile which can then be linked directly when publishing. So you can link your ORCID ID to your author name during the publication process, and then it can automatically update this list. think that's all I've got to say about orchids. If anyone else has anything.
Yes, I'd like to add something about orchid. It is kind of compulsory in the academic world. You won't be able to make applications for funds in a number of organizations without the orchid number. So I don't think we have much choice on that. It's something that you just have to set up, because whenever you are applying for funds or even some publications, well, it's helpful when you have the orchid number, you just put it in and they will know how to link your data with the publications when they are reviewing the manuscripts and so forth. But if you would want to dare apply for funds in Europe, then you'll be required to have it as the applicant or a co-applicant. That's an experience that I have that I would want to share with everyone. So an orchid number is something that you'd have to set up.
Okay, Christian.
Yeah, just to confirm what Odipo said, that you really need to have one, I think, because again, it's free and it helps a lot because you have a unique number, and sometimes there can be confusion between the name of different authors, and when people are looking for your papers, it can be quite confusing. So really, it's very fast, it's useful, you can have a list of publication, and for me, this is again the best. And also because it's free. I don't remember who started it, but it's not a big company. So I think it's Human Sciences. Well, I don't remember, but I have to work in Asia, and very often people have very similar name, Chinese people, and so on. And so it can be useful even for European. No? My name is quite common. There are many people having the same name as me, so it's very useful and fast to register.
Again, that just a comment on that, bringing back to what Michael said earlier, make sure your profiles are up to date, so that it is easy for people to find you.
Can I make a comment? One thing that you really need to make sure is that you use your correct name and you use the same name. It's very confusing. I mean, this is from a UK perspective, and we've had lots of trouble in organizing these workshops in that people use their names in different ways. And I know it's a sort of an African thing. You may sometimes use a first name and then you refer to yourself as what we would see as your middle name. And it's what do we call you? And then I find out after a few years of knowing someone, I've been calling them the wrong name. So it's one of these challenges that, you need to consider beyond your own culture. If you are changing your name in different settings, if it's different in ORCID or ResearchGate, people will be confused. They won't find you. So try and be consistent. I'll give you an example of a PhD student that visited from Zimbabwe here. We all knew her as Grace. So her name was Grace Munita Manziki, and she was registered as a visitor onto our security system here. All of the visitor badges were prepared, and then she arrived and she had to have a health and safety induction, and she introduced herself as Munita Grace Manziki, and it completely confused the system. And I was asked, who is this person? Well, quite simply, she swapped her two names around, and she was trying to, and she wanted to be referred to as Munita, which was the first I'd heard for about 4 or 5 years. And of course, everything in the systems was set, so it couldn't be changed. So I think when you set up these systems in ResearchGate, make sure you get it right from the beginning. It will be confusing to change it later on. Okay, now I do recognize that is a UK perspective, and maybe it isn't a worry. Maybe Akinad or Adipo could comment. I think Adipo's got his hand up.
Well, many Africans have so many names. And they are used preferentially at different times, for different reasons, and so forth. And many times in our setups, with many Africans, they're called by a name. If you're named after your grandfather, then I don't know about many other Africans, but it was always one name. And all the other things would just be nicknames and so forth. So like my name is Odipo, and somebody like Job, I think is Aboke. So you along your life somewhat, you go to a church and you're then given a name Job. So it's confusing. Sometimes people would prefer to use it and then so on. But I think people settle in on one thing, to use the new name that they're given along the way, and then their names. But some don't want to drop their names. So, but the thing is that regardless of the debates and so forth, you must settle on a name. The unfortunate thing is that people don't believe that, like for example, that I am Odipo or San, that I should not have another name. So they want to add it. It's not allowed. My name just remains that in all my publications. It's part of all the other names that I may have. And we just have to accept, you just have to settle on a name, 3 names or 1 name, or 2 names, and be settled on that. And don't change it. Don't try to know better. It's just that when a name has become that is what he uses all the time, then that remains his.
You must be searchable. So the internet is forever, remember? If you put anything on the internet, it will stay there.
I was just about to say, there was one more question about Twitter, and
okay,
someone didn't know
just to say something. Okay. Go ahead, Humphrey. Go ahead.
Thank you, Aki. So yeah, just a question about Twitter, saying they thought it was for socializing purposes. Do you have to change your entire profile, or just the tone of the post? Like Michael said, whatever you write on Twitter or on the internet, it's there forever. So if you're trying to present an academic profile on some platforms and then tweeting potentially radical ideas on an open source platform like Twitter, then there's a real contrast and difference in what you're trying to put across. So
you would have to make sure any comment that is potentially controversial, this opinion is my own and not that of my employer. But even then, if you're having to say that, think really about what, if you have to think about that, then really should you be...
If it is what it's... Yeah.
Sorry, Olivier,
should it be... Now let me just make a comment about this name issue, because it's actually a problem with Akinade. It's a compound name. Either of the two can stand alone, Akin or Ade. Now, but when I write my name, I write it in full, Akinade Olatunji, which is my surname. Now, my friends call me by the short form of my first name, Aki, A-K-I-N. That's what my friends call me. But when I'm going to do a write-up, I actually write it in full, Akinade Olatunji. So I think it's a challenge with the way the African names are set up, especially for some of us from this part of the world. Like my surname is actually also another compound name. You can call it either Ola or Tuji, depending on what your preference is. So that's a challenge we have to learn to overcome. But in my own writing, I've always consistently written Akinade Olatuji. But if you see the mail I sent to you, if I send you a mail from Google, it's going to bring it as Femi. And I was explaining to Bob one day that there is actually a long story behind that. Because when I was setting up that mail, that was when we had this email coming into Africa for the first time. I had to go do it in the cyber cafe. I couldn't do it on time. And the guy that was doing it for me just remembered that he used to call me a name that looks like that, and he just used Femi as my first name. And I've been trying forever to reverse it. It has been tough. So sometimes some of this is you need to be consistent, as Michael have said, because the name by which you are known is the name by which you will be searched and identified. So consistency across all the platform is very, very important, even on the social media platform. And that is the mistake the younger ones are making now. Their social media platform, they will have this, but like an alias kind of a name or a reframing of their name. So it makes the identity to be kind of blurred online. So it's important, if you're going to be a researcher, ensure that what you're going to put out there, either on the social media platform or on the scientific platform, are things that will not come back to haunt you in the future. People can forget, but there is this saying here that internet does not forget. So think about it very well. If you're going to put a caveat that this is your own opinion, is it actually worth pushing out that opinion? Because it can come back to actually haunt you. So it's important to maintain that consistency. That's just what I want to add about this issue of name and the African teeth to our name.
So one other thing that would be quite useful for you to be aware of, use of the name can be quite confusing if you are registering for workshops or conferences. So Andrea asked you all to register at the beginning of this project, and she had your names, your emails, and your WhatsApp number and all sorts. And then when we actually started the workshops, she wondered who a lot of you were, because you're using different names on your identification for your Zoom. So your Zoom, make sure your ID is correct, and you can correct that very simply with the 3 dots. I think you can then so if you go to your screen, you've got 3 dots, click on that, and you can rename yourself. So that's quite a simple thing to do when you're in meetings. One other problem when you were mixing the names around is that we were trying to match with our registration details, so not knowing who has actually turned up was quite difficult for some examples. Email addresses, check when you type in your email address. This is very important that you've got it correct. I don't know how many I went down the list of 55 and had to correct because Yahoo was spelt wrongly, or Gmail was typed wrongly, or there was no .co, .com. And if you are emailing people to ask for help or registering for something, you may get frustrated thinking, why are they not responding to me? It could simply because your email is not typed in. Now that can happen to anyone, and it does, but it happened a lot in this group. So it's suggesting, that's why I'm mentioning it. It's attention to detail, things like that. And you may wonder why people are ignoring you. It's simply because maybe you haven't typed in your email address correctly. So, and of course, everyone here today is probably okay, but maybe it's the people that aren't here today who may have had all the problems. So we were going to talk about the
Michael, not everybody. There's